Okay, as promised, I'm back to talk about more horror movies. And I apologize for the noise. I'm outside. It's such a pretty day. So you're going to hear birds chirping. You're going to hear cars passing by. But we'll make it through. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I might have to break this video up into segments because I've got a lot of stuff that I want to talk about, but I want to go back and talk about horror movies from the 80s, 90s genre, and then start talking about this new school stuff in the 2000s, and then talk about the really, really recent stuff. So first, let me just say, and I know I'm gonna get some haters. People gonna leave some stuff on here saying I don't know what I'm talking about. This stuff is opinion based. I am not an expert. I'm only telling you my views from my world of horror, and if you don't like it, then do a video and voice your own opinion. But don't hate on me because I don't like y'all stinky ass movies. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is 80 through 90 horror movies, and I've got some stuff that I feel like are critical movies that deserve to get mentioned, and then I've got some stuff that is like honorable mention, things that are good movies but they don't fall in the lines of this. So the first movie on my list is always Tom Holland's Fright Night. Y'all know I already did a video about that one. I think it's a really great movie. The reason why I like it so much is because it has such a good reality base to it. We all know that monsters and stuff aren't real, but there really could be a guy who was a serial killer killing prostitutes. I mean, that's all Jerry Dandridge was a serial killer. He was killing prostitutes, and he just happened to be a vampire. So it does add a bit of reality, and also I like it because it's so innovative and fresh for the time. In the 80s, we started seeing movies like Critters. We saw Creep Show. We saw Silver Bullet. Things like that. Those are the type of movies that I like. Things that, to a certain degree, they are fearful, but they're not so fearful to the point where you just can't watch. You can sit down and you can manage to watch Fright Night, even with the corniness, and still think at the end it was a pretty decent movie. So I mentioned George A. Romero's Creep Show Part 1. It was really good. The stories were, you know, just those comic book type stories broken up in like a mini video. Most of them were short. The reason why I like the second one done by Stephen King is, of course, my good old Indian Man, and then there's the hitchhiker who gets hit and he's like holding on to this lady's Benz and thanks for the ride, lady. I mean, you just don't see that type of stuff in movies today. So if you have not seen Creep Show Part 1 or Part 2, I urge you to go and rent it, or it should be here on YouTube somewhere. Somebody throw a link up so these new people can find out what they've been missing. Stephen King's actually, let me repeat that. Silver Bullet is based off of the book Cycle of a Werewolf by Stephen King. Rest in peace to the late Corey Haim, who stars in this movie. It's really good. It's fresh. It was innovative for the time, and it can be quite scary as hell. Reverend Lowe transforming into that werewolf. I mean, there were no parts in that movie to me that were corny. A lot of the visual effects, especially his transformation from human to werewolf and then werewolf back to human, it was very, very good considering that this movie came out in the late 80s. I have not seen a werewolf movie of that type since. Now, I'll talk about Underworld and a lot of those other movies later, but as far as Silver Bullet, I still think hands down is one of the best werewolf movies I've ever seen. I've got The Thing on the list too, and if you haven't seen The Thing, I'm telling you, man, that is a creepy movie. It's one of them movies where you get something crawling on your shoulder and you got to take a look because you don't know what it is. I mean, again, visual effects are everything, and I think they really nailed it because the creatures, or the creature in The Thing, took on different life forms, but it still had that element where it was like an alien, but it kind of looked human, and it wasn't corny at all. It was really good. It was set in like I believe it was like some type of Alaskan type setting. It's been a while, so forgive me if I don't have the proper setting for that movie. I love it. Um, it's not long at all. It's like an hour and something. It's pretty decent. Okay, now because I said 80s to 90s, I'm kind of going to jump back and forth, but I'm going to touch on Bram Stoker's Dracula for just one moment. A lot of the Dracula stories, in my opinion, that have come even from the early 50s, 60s on down to the more recent vampire movies, we never really saw a love story like Bram Stoker's Dracula. Yeah, we've got this Twilight mess, which I'm not against Twilight. It's a good series. It's making a lot of money. These kids, they love it because they don't have anything to go off of. They don't know what a good Dracula story is. For people who know about Bram Stoker's Dracula, which was a book, they turned it into a movie. They had an all-star cast in that movie. Anthony Hopkins is in there playing Van Helsing. I mean, it was a true love story, but at the same time, it had the horror element to it. Visual effects were good in it, and I still think that hands down, it is one of the best vampire movies out. Period. Can't touch it. We all know about the original Nightmare on Elm Street, the original Halloween, and Friday the 13th. Those movies will forever hold a special place for me because, again, they were inventive for their time. Nobody else had come up with any type of storyline like that, and I think for the most part, except for a couple of those Nightmare on Elm Streets, they started to get a little out of hand. In particular, I want to say that it was the second one. It kind of had like a gay undertone to it, where the coach goes into the gay bar and then he gets whipped when he's in the locker room shower area, and you see his rear. I mean, there are just some parts to it that were kind of like, it kind of really took away from the original storyline. And then the fact that Freddy appears, but he appears in well, it wasn't really the daytime because it was at night, but he showed up when all the kids were awake. Little parts like that, those small little inconsistencies is what ruins movies. Some people might agree that that added an extra part to Freddy, but Freddy's whole thing is that he comes when everybody's sleeping. If you see him when you're awake, then it takes away from the movie. Now, Wes Craven was able to redeem himself when he did that night, the new Nightmare that came out a little later on, where he has the original cast come back, but Freddy becomes more a part of their reality more than just their dream worlds of where they were in the movies. And I think Wes Craven's new Nightmare, as far as the Nightmare on Elm Street series is concerned, it was innovative, it was scary as hell, and it still held true to the original series. So kudos to Wes Craven, even though it's been a while now. He had a new movie that came out a couple of, I'm not going to say couple of years ago, maybe a year or so ago, My Soul to Take. That was garbage. I'm sorry, Wes Craven, love you to death, but that was horrible. You could have just done without that. Amityville Horror was another one in the 80s, really great. I loved it. They redid that one in the 2000s, and I think they did for a remake. It was a decent job, but again, I want to see some new stuff. Everybody loves Poltergeist. I won't ever forget that. The Exodus, Alien or Aliens, or however you want to put it. I already mentioned Critters, and Night of the Living Dead. Those are my list of the movies in the 80s and 90s that really meant something, that were innovative, had great visual effects, new ideas, and hands down, they just can't be touched. Almost every one of these movies that I just named, somebody has tried to duplicate them, or somebody has tried to remake them in some type of form. Either they stuck to the original script or they tried to do it on their own, but they've all been duplicated. So that's how you know you're working with a monster, right? When people try to dub your stuff. Alright, and things that were honorable mention on my list, Phantasm, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Fly. And The Fly I kind of put like on my regular list and honorable mention because The Fly is just The Fly. I mean, it was really great. Jeff Goldblum pulled out a number on that character. Maximum Overdrive, The Lost Boys, again, rest in peace to Corey Haim. Stephen King's It, even though it was a TV series, that really could have been done into a real theater movie. He would have had to change some things about it because, of course, it's like really long. But Stephen King's It is scary to me today, like for real. I keep thinking, oh, Pennywise gonna come up out here somewhere. The Predator, the original, even 2 was okay, but with Arnold Schwarzenegger in the first one, that one was really good. The Howling, Terminator kind of falls in the genre of science fiction more than horror, but it was still, you know, it was there. Christine, about the killer car. Hellraiser, and of course Child's Play. I love Child's Play, and you know, Chris Sarandon is in the first one, so of course that hits a special note to me because I love Chris Sarandon. So those were the movies as far as like the old school 80s and 90s. Some things that fell on the sci-fi was the Gremlins, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, and Tremors. There were probably like Terminator was another one that would fell on the science fiction because I still group science fiction with horror because it adds an element of fantasy to it. But it's still, you know, some of the sci-fi movies can be really good. Alright, so we've gone over the movies that I consider to be important or credible, things that are worth mentioning. This was from the 80s to the 90s. When I come back, I'm going to talk about movies in the 2000s that were fresh and innovative, and then we'll head off into the stuff for the later times. Again, these are my opinions. It's either you like it or you don't like it, and if you don't like it, then you probably don't know what the hell you're talking about anyways, because any good horror movie fan, anybody who knows anything about horror movies will totally agree with every movie I put on this list, whether it be honorable mention or whether it be from the regular list. So that's a done daughter. See you when I come back. Peace.